Right, Jonathan Schrager for Stretty News TV, joined by Mark Ogden here, the morning after the first game of the pre-season tour. First of all, how would you assess the buzz around United at the moment following the quartet of signings and what promises to be a good season?
I think people are excited, but I still think they're waiting for more to arrive. I think that it feels a little bit like 2/3 of the job done. Yeah. I think there's still big questions over centre-half and centre-forward, so I think if it ended now, the transfer window, I think there'd be a sense of disappointment really that, a centre-half hasn't arrived that would probably fill the gap that people thought was there last year in terms of experience, and obviously having let Van Persie and Falcao go, you really do need another striker. Last night was okay, but second half they played a different team, and it showed you that if Wayne Rooney gets injured, there's nothing there. There really isn't. It's James Wilson and Januzaj last night, so there's a couple of big obvious areas to address.
And would you be concerned as a United fan that when Louis van Gaal was posed that very question in the presser, that he alluded to Rooney and Chicharito potentially coming back and Wilson in a sense of, well, he feels that maybe it is sort of satisfied that area, or do you think that was just a bit of kidology from Louis? It's
a bit of kidology. It's like the old Fergie trick of talking up the Tom Cleverleys and Phil Joneses, because if a guy says somebody's better than they are, then they might play a bit better. David Moyes went the other way and was constantly voicing concerns and a bit of pessimism. So Fergie or Van Gaal sent a player's better than he is, then it might make them perform better. But I think he has to be careful, Van Gaal, not to say I need new strikers, because it automatically denigrates the players he's got. So he has to play a balancing act. But I'd be surprised if the season began without another striker or forward player.
And what about centre backs? We all know that it's been mooted that Otamendi might come in, and people have kind of drawn parallels with his style and that of a Nemanja Vidic, kind of no-nonsense defender. Is that the type of defender that United require?
Not many people at the club are talking about Otamendi. This seems to be one of these internet things that like Nicholas Gaitan, that just never seems to go away. It's got a long shelf life. So I don't know. I think Ramos is the target, and if they don't get Ramos, then they'll look elsewhere. But I'm not sure about Otamendi. I think that one has just developed a life of its own. But they do need a commanding centre half, like a Vidic, or just as a leader basically. Smalling and Jones have got. Well, he said they've got potential, but maybe that potential needs to be realised. But they're not leaders, they're not commanding characters, and I think having Schweinsteiger around will help that. But they needed somebody at the back who will organise and dictate, basically.
And how realistic, obviously from your insight, you have more insight than most of us on Twitter and on the internet, how realistic is Ramos? Or is he just leveraging the name of United to bargain a better deal for himself at Madrid?
Personally, I think Ramos is unlikely, because it's all tied to De Gea, and I can see why United are doing it, that if you want De Gea, we'll have Ramos. But he's been given the captaincy at Real Madrid now, and I think obviously the money's a factor. He wants a new contract at Real. They're not paying the wages he wants, but to be made the captain of Real Madrid and walk away from that, it takes a lot of doing. So as much as it would be an interesting signing, I'm not whether it'd be the right signing, but in terms of what it would mean, it'd be a good signing. But I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if the transfer window closes and he's not arrived.
Okay, and then you alluded to Schweinsteiger before and the kind of characteristics that he brings to the team. But what about the other three players from what you saw? I know we've only seen 45 minutes of them, but what qualities do you think they'll bring to the side?
Yeah, I mean, it is 45 minutes. One thing I saw last night was how Schneiderlin has brought just energy and kind of a youthful vigour to the midfield, and they haven't had that. Michael Carrick's been putting fires out for 4-5 years now. He's been doing 2 or 3 jobs, and it was almost, you could almost see the relief in Michael Carrick last night that Schneiderlin was there to mop things up at the back, to create play, and just to have that energy and that power there that United have lacked. And it's so he was impressive. Depay, too early to say. He was just he got a lot of pace, a lot of power, but I think awareness-wise you could find a pass a bit quicker. But you can't judge you 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And Darmian again, did some good things. Almost let a goal, conceded a goal with a bit of a lack of awareness. So you can't judge some of the first 45 minutes of pre-season, but he's an international, so he's obviously got qualities.
Yeah, and Depay as well. I think we're United fans in particular want to draw premature parallels with players like Ronaldo and things like that. We did it when Nani arrived. I think maybe he even went on record as stating it himself, which probably didn't do him any favours. But there have been parallels drawn already between the type of player that he could progress to be. Do you think he has got the potential to go on to be a top draw player for us?
Yeah, I mean, I saw him play for Holland against Spain in I think it was March in Amsterdam, and he was a really impressive player that night. A lot of pace. He's right-footed but plays on the left, cuts inside, and he always wants the ball. He's he'll move across the front three. But I think he'll find the Premier League a lot harder than the Dutch league, and that might, whether it'll affect his confidence. He seems a very confident guy, but he won't find it as easy. But he's got that, belief that he can do well. So I think he's got all the attributes. Certainly physically, he's cut out the right way, and he's quick. But I think even Ronaldo took a couple of years to settle in. So it's an improvement of what they've got, but I think 6 months it'll take him to settle in at least.
Yeah, and just one last question on the striker situation. If you could pinpoint one striker on, two criteria, who you think's actually realistic that we will bring in, and who you think that would slot into United seamlessly?
It's difficult because all the best strikers at the biggest clubs, Lewandowski's at Bayern, Aguero's at Man City, Benzema's at Real Madrid, Barca have got Neymar and Suarez. So beneath that, I suppose Cavani at PSG as well. So beneath that level, you're kind of taking a gamble. I can't pinpoint a guy outside that kind of group that you'd think, he's a guaranteed striker. So Pedro, we're told, is a target that Van Gaal likes, and he's not a centre forward as such, but he's a guy that has always scored goals at Barcelona, can play on the right of a three. Yeah. He's the sort of player that United would probably go for, someone that's versatile, that can play in a couple of positions, because there isn't really, a grade A centre forward out there. There just isn't. And there are, but they're not going to be sold by the big clubs. Real, Barca, Bayern aren't going to sell the Ronaldos and Lewandowskis. It's just not going to happen. So they're going to have to find the next one, and I don't know who that is. Yeah. Or they're going to have to look at someone like Pedro, who can do a different thing, but support Rooney more. So that might be the way they go. Not going for a Galactico, as they say. The Falcao experiment, I could see why they did it. They wanted somebody who would be in that bracket, but the guy was struggling with an injury, and he just looked like his best days were behind him. And
from what you've heard, I'm not trying to elicit anything controversial out of you here, but from what you've heard behind the scenes, has there been any rumblings of a link with Pedro or what have you?
Yeah, there's an interesting. We all did the story on whatever day it was. I've lost track of time over here, but I think it was Friday's in Saturday's papers. Yeah. There's an interest in Pedro. He's got a £22 million buyout clause. He wants to move to England. He wants to go to United because they'll pay the wages that Barca won't pay. So it's a case of will it happen. Chelsea are also interested, but these things never happen quickly. So who knows? He's coming out to California next week to Barcelona. Easy to do it then, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Now I've been travelling the States for a couple of weeks as well, so I've lost track a bit of what's been going on recently. I was going to ask as well, final question with regards to United and realistic expectations for next year. We all knew last season the objective was to get top four. We managed that. Whether or not we managed it with panache is another question, but we're in the top four. Would you caution United fans to temper their expectations this year?
Well, not really, no, because I do think that they can challenge for the title, but they wouldn't be the favourites for the title. I still think that Chelsea and City are stronger teams. Let's see how they stand on the 1st of September when the window closes. But I think, this year Van Gaal, top four won't be enough. I think they have to win a trophy, whether it's a cup or the League Cup or whatever. Yeah. Champions League quarter-finals and top two in the league. I think if they win the FA Cup or the League Cup and finish fourth, that'll be a bad season. Or if they finish fourth and get to the last 16 of the Champions League, it'll be a bad season. They've got targets in each competition which they have to kind of reach to justify the outlay. And they went 3 years without a title under Sir Alex in the last decade, and I think that might happen again. But there has to be signs of progress this year, and they have to go close. There's been an awful lot of money spent. It's almost £300 million now since Sir Alex left, and it needed spending. A lot of it's been wasted or overspent, but at some point you've got to start delivering on that.
And just one last question about Louis van Gaal, and obviously, like you say, off camera we were talking a little bit about how it's a bit more of a relaxed atmosphere here on pre-season. He's had a year now to kind of bed in and deal with the media. How are you finding him?
Fine. He came over this reputation as being a bit dictator, hard guy to get to like, but it's totally fine. But I think, when you've dealt with Sir Alex Ferguson over the years, nobody can compare really, because in terms of the way he commanded a press room, it's a different thing altogether. Van Gaal's like a big pussycat compared to Sir Alex, but he doesn't lose his temper like Sir Alex did. Or there are sometimes his press conferences can be quite hard to understand, but we like him. He's quite a funny character at times, and he's got a presence about him. Yeah. And he answers questions. He doesn't duck anything really. So from a point of view of a journalist, he's great.
Fantastic, Mark. Really appreciate the time today. Thank you.
Cheers, mate.